The sun blazed mercilessly over the crowded city boulevard, its heat shimmering off polished steel and glass towers. The hum of engines and impatient horns filled the air, but one car sat silent, its sleek black body an immovable monument of wealth and failure. A Bentley Continental GT, gleaming like a black diamond, stranded in the middle of traffic. Its hood was up, smoke curling out in soft gray ribbons. And standing beside it, face tightening with every tick of his Rolex, was none other than billionaire tycoon Adrian Voss. To the public, Adrian was untouchable. A man who had risen from sharp instincts and ruthless decisions, now commanding an empire worth billions. Yet here he was, powerless on the asphalt, sweat darkening the collar of his designer suit. His personal driver stood frozen, fumbling with excuses. Two hired mechanics crouched near the engine, their brows furrowed, each turn of the wrench ending with a defeated sigh. Adrian's jaw tightened. He glanced at his phone. A boardroom full of international investors was waiting, and the deal on the table could either expand his empire or cost him a fortune. Time was money, and right now he was bleeding both. Crowds gathered, phones lifted, whispers spreading like wildfire. "That's Adrian Vossna," one man muttered. "The billionaire? Can't even get his car running?" Laughter followed. In a city obsessed with appearances, there was no greater humiliation than a man of power brought to his knees by a machine. One mechanic finally stood, wiping his greasy hands on his jumpsuit. "Sir, I'm sorry, we've tried everything. The system's locked, engines refusing to respond." "It's not complicated." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Complicated?" His voice was a low thunder. "You're telling me that a car worth more than your life can't be fixed by your so-called expertise?" The mechanic stammered, shrinking back. The second tried, fiddling with wires, but the car remained stubbornly lifeless. The crowd grew bolder now. Some laughed openly, others shook their heads. Adrian could feel the weight of their mockery pressing against him. His reputation built on control was slipping, and then a voice. Soft, almost fragile, yet carrying through the noise like a whisper of defiance. "Ina, I can fix it." Heads turned. Standing a few steps away, half hidden in the crowd, was a girl. Her clothes were ragged, threadbare fabric hanging loosely around her frail body. Her hair, tangled and dulled by dirt, framed a face both weary and luminous with quiet strength. And her swollen belly beneath the fabric revealed her condition. She was heavily pregnant. For a moment, silence stretched. Then came the laughter. "You? Fix a Bentley?" A man jeered. "She probably doesn't even know how to open the hood." "Hey, sweetheart," another called. "This ain't some scrapyard jalopy." Even the guards chuckled, shaking their heads at the absurdity. Adrian looked at her, his expression unreadable. She should have been invisible to him, a homeless pregnant girl with no place in his world. And yet something in her gaze unsettled him. There was no hesitation, no begging, just certainty. "You?" he asked finally, voice edged with disbelief. "You think you can do what trained mechanics couldn't?" She stepped forward, ignoring the laughter that followed like a cruel soundtrack. Each step was heavy, yet determined. Her hand brushed her belly protectively as she moved closer to the car. "I can try," she said simply. The guards immediately stepped in front of her. "Sir, don't waste your time. She'll just cause damage." But Adrian raised a hand, silencing them. His pride was already bleeding. What did he have to lose? He studied her face again, searching for a crack in her composure. Instead, he found steady eyes that seemed older than her years. "Fine," he said at last. "You have 5 minutes," the crowd erupted. Gasps, laughter, a few murmurs of curiosity. Phones came up again, recording every second. To them, this was a spectacle, an untouchable billionaire giving a desperate beggar girl a chance to make a fool of herself. She moved closer, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the car. Not with the clumsy fumbling of the mechanics, but with reverence, like she was meeting an old friend. She leaned in, listening, sniffing the air near the engine. Her father's voice echoed in her mind lessons whispered in a dusty workshop years ago. "Engines talk, child. Not with words, but with sounds, smells, vibrations. Listen closely and they'll tell you what they need." She placed a hand on the hood, eyes closed. The faintest smile touched her lips. Then, without hesitation, she reached for a loose cable, brushing aside what the mechanics had missed. She tore a strip from her dress, winding it tightly around a corroded connection. With a coin from her pocket, she scraped away rust from a stubborn contact point, sparks flying. The crowd laughed louder now, convinced she was embarrassing herself. One man shouted, "She's making it worse." But Adrian didn't laugh. His eyes were fixed on her movements, swift, precise, confident. Not random guessing, but deliberate choices. Minutes ticked by. She tightened one last bolt with surprising strength, wiped her hands on her dress, and looked up at Adrian. "Try it now," she whispered. Adrian hesitated. He slipped into the driver's seat, turned the key. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, with a deep growl, the Bentley's engine roared to life, smooth and powerful, as though mocking everyone who had doubted her. Gasps erupted. Phones dropped. The laughter died instantly, replaced by stunned silence. Adrian sat frozen, hands gripping the wheel, eyes wide. He had expected failure, maybe even disaster. But this was impossible. He stepped out slowly, gaze fixed on the girl who now stood trembling, her strength fading. "How?" His voice caught. He swallowed hard. "How did you do that?" She didn't answer. Her body swayed, her face pale from exhaustion. And then, as the murmurs of the crowd rose again, she whispered something barely audible, words that pierced through the billionaire's armor. "Please, Anna, don't let them find me." And with that, she collapsed. Adrian lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground. The crowd surged closer, voices buzzing with shock and curiosity. But Adrian's world had narrowed to the fragile girl in his arms, the weight of her secret heavy in his mind. This was no ordinary homeless girl. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous, far more extraordinary than a broken car. The sirens of the city faded into the background as Adrian carried the unconscious girl into his waiting SUV. His guards exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. The weight in their employer's stare silenced any protest. For the billionaire, everything else, his deal, his pride, the watching crowd had dissolved. What remained was the fragile figure in his arms, and the cryptic words she had whispered before collapsing. As the car sped toward his mansion, Adrian found himself staring at her face, pale yet calm as if she were lost in a dream. And in truth she was, for in the silence of her fainting, memories stirred like ghosts, clawing their way to the surface. Once, long before the city streets swallowed her, she had a name spoken with warmth. Elena. Elena's earliest memories were not of hunger or fear, but of laughter echoing in a modest garage at the edge of the slums. Her father, Miguel, was no ordinary mechanic. He had the kind of hands that could coax life out of engines others declared dead. He worked with patience, pride, and a love that turned even grease-stained days into moments of joy. As a child, Elena would sit on an overturned oil drum, watching him work. He would hand her small tools, letting her feel the weight of a wrench or the cool steel of a screwdriver. "Listen closely, Elena," he'd say, his voice rich and gentle. "Engines speak. They tell you their pain, their secrets. You just have to learn to hear them." By the age of 10, Elena could already diagnose problems that baffled grown men. Word spread quickly, and soon the locals whispered that Miguel's little girl had magic ears. Together, father and daughter became the beating heart of the neighborhood, fixing cars, repairing motorbikes, offering free help when neighbors couldn't pay. But success breeds envy. It began with quiet threats. Men in sharp suits and darker eyes started visiting the garage, offering Miguel money to sell the land. The property, though humble, sat on a corner lot valuable to men who thrived on intimidation and control. Miguel refused every time. "This garage is my home," he told them. "It belongs to my daughter's future." The men didn't return with offers again. They returned with violence. Elena remembered the night vividly. The shattered glass, her mother's scream, the sound of fists and boots against her father's ribs. She had been 12, crouched beneath a workbench, trembling as shadows danced in the firelight. By the time the smoke cleared, her world was ash, her parents gone. The garage reduced to rubble. She had no one left but her uncle, a man of cold eyes and quicker fists. At first he pretended to care, but soon his resentment surfaced. He saw her not as family but as a burden. "You should have died with them," he spat one night. drunk and staggering. And so, by the time Elena turned 16, she was thrown into the streets with nothing but the clothes on her back and the faint echo of her father's lessons in her ears. Life on the streets was a different kind of battlefield. Elena begged for food, slept under bridges, and clung to survival with the stubbornness her father had once admired. Yet cruelty met her at every corner. One evening, a wealthy man in a tailored suit offered her food and shelter. Desperation clouded her judgment. She followed him, believing kindness still existed. But the kindness was a mask, and what lay behind it scarred her forever. Months later, she found herself pregnant, alone, abandoned, her body carrying both the weight of her child and the weight of betrayal. The streets grew harsher. Shopkeepers pushed her away. Families crossed the road to avoid her. She wrapped her belly with rags, not from shame, but from fear. For whispers began to circle that the same men who had destroyed her family were searching for her. Somehow, in the back of her mind, she believed they had never truly let her go. It was a cold night when she overheard them again, voices she hadn't heard since childhood. She was curled in the corner of an alley when two men passed, their conversation sharp, careless. Neither girl survived. The one from the garage. She'll be a problem if she talks. She won't last long on the streets. She's already carrying. Doesn't matter. The boss wants her gone. Loose ends are dangerous, her blood froze. They hadn't forgotten her. The fire that had taken her parents hadn't been enough. They wanted her erased, and so Elena vanished deeper into the underbelly of the city. She avoided shelters, hospitals, anyone who might record her name. She lived in shadows, unseen, unheard, until the day fate dragged her back into the light standing on that busy boulevard, watching a billionaire's car fail while the world mocked him. She hadn't planned to step forward. But something inside her, perhaps her father's voice, perhaps desperation, pushed her. And when the engine roared back to life beneath her trembling hands, she knew she had done more than fix a car. She had announced to the world, "I am still here." Adrian's SUV slowed as it pulled into the gates of his mansion. Elena stirred, eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The plush leather seat beneath her felt alien, the chilled air from the vents almost luxurious after weeks of suffocating heat. Her gaze shifted, landing on Adrian. His sharp suit, his expensive watch, his unyielding posture. He was everything the world had always denied her. Power, security, untouchable. But she didn't see kindness in his eyes. She saw calculation, curiosity, a man who wanted answers. "You're awake," Adrian said, his voice low. He studied her closely, as though peeling back the layers of her soul. "Now you're going to tell Mina who exactly you are. And why the hell you asked me not to let them find you?" Elena's heart thundered. Her past was no longer a secret hidden in shadows. It had followed her here, into the lion's den of wealth and power, and she knew that once she spoke, nothing in either of their lives would ever be the same again. This is where Eleanor's world and Adrian's world collide more deeply. Her recovery inside the billionaire's mansion, the sharp contrast between luxury and poverty, Adrian's curiosity clashing with her guardedness, and the subtle setup for the coming danger. The mansion gates groaned shut behind Adrian's convoy, sealing off the chaos of the city. Guards in pressed uniforms flanked the courtyard, their eyes flicking curiously toward the SUV as it rolled to a stop on the cobblestone drive. Adrian stepped out first, his face unreadable, then opened the back door himself, something he almost never did. The girl stirred as he leaned down. Her eyes, heavy-lidded, opened to the sight of a world she had never imagined entering. Marble pillars soared skyward, chandeliers glittered even through tall glass windows, fountains bubbled in precise arcs of water. Elena froze, overwhelmed. For weeks, she had been sleeping on concrete floors, counting coins for scraps of bread. Now she was staring at wealth that could buy entire streets where she once begged. Her first instinct was not awe, but fear. "Verena, where am I?" she whispered. "My home," Adrian said curtly. "And until you explain yourself, your shelter." She looked at him, uncertain if she had walked into safety or a gilded cage. Inside, the mansion swallowed her whole. The air was cool, scented with lavender and polished wood. A red carpet stretched across the gleaming floor, swallowing her ragged footsteps. Adrian's staff lined the hallmaids in crisp uniforms, a butler stiff as a statue, 2 assistants clutching tablets. Their eyes darted toward her swollen belly, her torn dress, the dirt beneath her fingernails. Whispers trailed her. "Who is she? He brought her?" "Impossible." Elena lowered her gaze, shame heating her cheeks. Every glance was a dagger, every whisper a reminder that she didn't belong here. Adrian ignored them all. "Prepare a room," he ordered sharply. "She stays here for now." The butler hesitated. "Sir, with all due respect, do I sound like I'm asking?" Adrian's tone cut the air like glass. The butler bowed quickly, vanishing to fulfill the command. Elena followed, her steps uncertain. The staff led her upstairs, into a bedroom so vast it could have swallowed the alley she once called home. A canopy bed draped in silk stood in the center, its sheets white as untouched snow. A vanity gleamed in the corner, and golden curtains caught the fading sunlight. She stared at it all, her hands trembling. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she would not sleep on stone. Later that evening, Adrian found her seated at the edge of the bed, still in her torn dress, staring at the floor. He studied her in silence for a moment, his sharp eyes tracing the faint scars on her arms, the hollowness in her cheeks, the quiet strength in her posture. "You're not just some street beggar," he said finally. "So tell me, who are you?" Elena flinched, her fingers twisting in her lap. "No one." Adrian's jaw tightened. He was not a man accustomed to evasions. People don't just appear out of nowhere and repair a Bentley the professional mechanics couldn't touch. "You have knowledge, skill. Where did it come from?" She remained silent. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And more importantly, who are the they you're so afraid of?" Her eyes flicked to his, wide and haunted. She wanted to speak, but fear sealed her lips. She had survived this long by burying the truth. Speaking it aloud would tear open wounds she wasn't sure she could survive again. "Fine," Adrian said at last, straightening. "Keep your secrets. But understand this, you're under my roof now. Which means your enemies, whoever they are, just became mine." Elena's breath caught. His words were not kindness, but command. And yet somewhere deep inside, a fragile spark of safety flickered. Days passed. Elena was given fresh clothes, meals that left her full for the first time in months, and medical attention for her exhaustion. But with every kindness came suspicion, the staff continued to whisper. The guards eyed her like a potential threat. One evening, while wandering the vast halls, she paused by Adrian's study. The door was ajar. Inside, Adrian's voice was low, speaking to someone over the phone. "Nayas, the deal fell through." "No, I don't regret it. Something more important came up." A pause. "I don't know who she is yet. But I will." Elena's heart pounded. She backed away before he could sense her, retreating into the safety of her room. The truth was catching up to her step by step. And then the first sign came. Late that night, she noticed something strange near the Bentley parked in the garage below her window. A faint glimmer, a metallic reflection under the wheel well. Her instincts flared. She had seen devices like this once before, in her father's workshop. Sabotage tools. She pressed a hand against the glass, her mind racing. Someone was watching. Someone was already here. The next morning, Adrian summoned her to the breakfast hall. He sat at the long table, a spread of food untouched before him. His eyes locked onto hers as she entered. "You saw something last night, didn't you?" he asked, her breath hitched. "How do you know?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, lips curving faintly. "Because the cameras caught you staring out that window for 10 minutes. "So what did you see?" She hesitated. Revealing it would mean stepping deeper into his world, exposing her knowledge. But silence might doom them both. Finally, she whispered, "There's something under your car. A tracker. Maybe worse. If they planted it, they know where you are." Adrian's gaze sharpened, a flash of genuine alarm crossing his features. For the first time, she had his full attention, not as a curiosity, but as someone holding a piece of his survival. "Who are they?" He pressed again. Elena's chest tightened. Shadows from her past clawed at her mind. Her uncle's face. The men in black suits, the fire. The screams. She lowered her gaze, voice breaking. "The same people who killed my parents." The words hung in the air like a blade. Adrian's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. For the first time, he realized the girl in his mansion was not just a survivor. She was a survivor of something far bigger, far darker than he had imagined, and by bringing her here, he might have opened his gates to the very storm she was running from. The days inside Adrian Blackwell's mansion unfolded like a dream Elena could not quite trust. Every morning, sunlight spilled through tall, arched windows, warming silken sheets she had never imagined sleeping beneath. Every meal was a feast compared to the scraps she had scavenged on the streets. The child in her belly finally stirred with energy, as if the little life inside her knew they had stumbled into safety. And yet safety was an illusion. Every polished hallway echoed with whispers when she passed. Maids exchanged looks. Guards straightened as if she were an intruder. Even in her new dresses, simple compared to Adrian's guests but finer than anything she had ever owned, Elena felt like an imposter wrapped in borrowed skin. But the greatest weight came not from judgmental stares. It came from the shadows lurking just beyond the gates. On the fourth night, Adrian's head of security, a broad-shouldered man named Cole, approached him in the study. Elena overheard them as she lingered in the hall, her hand resting unconsciously on her swollen stomach. "They've been circling," Cole said. His voice was low, taut. "2 black sedans, no plates, parked across the street yesterday. Same men spotted near the service entrance tonight. Whoever they are, they're patient." Adrian didn't flinch. His tone was cool steel. "And you're certain they're not press?" Cole shook his head. "These aren't paparazzi. They move like trained operatives. Military, maybe." Adrian's gaze flicked briefly to the closed door where Elena stood unseen. "Keep them away from her," he said, each word clipped with finality. Elena's breath hitched. She pulled back before they discovered her eavesdropping, heart-hammering. They had found her already. That evening, Elena sat by the mansion's vast fountain, the spray misting her face. Adrian found her there, hands folded protectively over her belly. "You're quiet," he observed. She looked up, eyes wary. "Your men saw them, didn't they?" "The ones who were watching?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he sat beside her, the marble bench creaking under his weight. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the water's gentle cascade. Finally, he spoke. "When I was your age, I thought money could buy security. Walls, guards, contracts. But the truth is, the higher you rise, the more enemies you collect. Some want your wealth. Some want your power. Some just want to see you fall." Elena turned to him. "Then why bring me here? Why risk more enemies?" Adrian studied her, the hard lines of his face softened by the moonlight. "Because when everyone else failed, you walked up and did the impossible. And I don't believe in coincidences." Her throat tightened. For the first time, she sensed not just curiosity in him, but something deeper respect. 2 days later, the mansion buzzed with preparation. Staff scurried through corridors, setting tables with crystal glassware, arranging flowers flown in from Paris. A gala, Elena learned. Adrian was hosting investors, politicians, and royalty in the grand ballroom. "Stay in your room," the headmaid instructed sharply. "This is no place for you." Elena nodded, but unease coiled in her chest. Crowds meant opportunity. If her pursuers were near, the gala would be the perfect cover. That night, as she lay in bed, she felt the baby stir again, stronger this time. She whispered into the darkness, "I won't let them take you." "I won't." The gala night arrived. Laughter and music spilled through the mansion like a tide. From her window, Elena watched car after car pull into the courtyard's sleek limousines, glittering jewels stepping out of velvet seats. But then, her eyes caught something chilling. A man in a suit stepping from a black sedan, no invitation in hand. His posture was too rigid, his gaze too sharp. He slipped inside with a group of legitimate guests. Unnoticed by the doorman, Elena's heart stuttered. She rushed from her room, ignoring the staff's protests, and made her way toward the ballroom balcony. From above, she scanned the glittering crowd. Adrian was at the center, shaking hands, his commanding presence drawing every eye. But she searched the shadows, and there by the far wall stood the man she had seen. Her skin prickled. She knew that stance. Her uncle's men had stood like that, wolves in borrowed suits. She couldn't hold her silence any longer. She descended the stairs, weaving through gowns and tuxedos until she reached Adrian. His eyes narrowed as he saw her. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured, keeping his smile fixed for his guests. She gripped his arm, her voice urgent but low. "One of them is here. In this room." Adrian's smile faltered for the briefest moment before he masked it again. He leaned closer. "Where?" She nodded subtly toward the far wall. Adrian's gaze followed, locking onto the figure. His jaw clenched. "Cole," he whispered into a discreet mic pinned to his collar. "By the east wall. Remove him quietly." Within seconds, 2 guards moved in, blending with the crowd, and escorted the stranger out a side door. Guests barely noticed, laughter continuing, champagne flowing. But Elena's knees shook with relief. Adrian guided her toward a quieter corner. His voice was low but edged with steel. "From now on, you tell me everything. Do you understand?" Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she nodded. Later that night, after the guests departed and silence settled over the mansion, Adrian found her once more by the fountain. She looked small beneath the stars, her arms wrapped protectively around herself. "You were right," he said simply. "They're here. Which means this isn't just your problem anymore." "It's mine too," her voice cracked. "You don't know what they've done, what they're capable of. Then tell me." Her eyes glistened, memories she had buried clawing their way back. "My parents weren't poor. They were scientists. They worked on something powerful. And when they refused to sell it to men who wanted to weaponize it, those men burned our home to the ground." Adrian's breath caught. He hadn't expected this. "They killed them," she whispered. "And I ran. I've been running ever since." The truth hung heavy in the night air. Adrian understood now. This wasn't just a homeless girl who had appeared by chance. She was the key to something larger, something dangerous. And by protecting her, he had just stepped into a war he didn't yet understand. The morning after the gala, the mansion felt quieter than usual. Too quiet. Servants moved with hushed urgency, avoiding Elena's eyes. Guards patrolled the grounds more frequently, radios crackling with terse updates. The memory of the infiltrator still hung over the household like smoke after a fire. Adrian was already awake when Elena found him in the study. He stood at the tall windows, staring out at the manicured gardens beyond. His black suit was immaculate, but the tightness in his jaw betrayed unease. "They'll try again," he said without turning. Elena's heart skipped. "You sound so certain." "Because men like that don't make single moves. If one failed, another is already in play." She wrapped her arms around herself, fighting the chill creeping into her bones. For weeks, she had been hunted. But now it wasn't just her. They would come for him too. Hours passed uneventfully, almost lulling Elena into a fragile hope. Adrian worked in his office, meetings conducted through encrypted calls. Elena wandered the vast library, her fingertips brushing spines of books she longed to lose herself in but couldn't. Every creak of the floorboards sent her pulse racing. By evening, Adrian insisted she join him for dinner. The dining hall stretched long and golden, candles flickering against mirrored walls. Plates of fine porcelain bore courses she could barely name. For a moment she almost forgot the danger outside. Adrian even allowed a faint smile when she wrinkled her nose at caviar. But halfway through the meal, Cole, the head of security, burst into the room. His face was grim. "We've got a problem." Adrian rose immediately. "What is it?" Cole hesitated, glancing at Elena before speaking. "The main gate's surveillance was cut 10 minutes ago. Cameras went dark, and his jaw tightened. 2 guards are missing." Elena's fork slipped from her hand. The mansion snapped into lockdown. Alarms wailed softly in the distance, shutters descending over windows with a metallic grind. Guards scrambled through corridors, radios buzzing with clipped orders. Adrian kept Elena close, his hand firm on her shoulder as they moved quickly toward the panic room hidden behind his study. But as they approached, a sudden gunshot cracked through the hall. One of Adrian's guards dropped instantly, blood spreading across his uniform. Elena froze. Her breath came shallow, terror clawing her throat. She recognized the man holding the gun, one of Adrian's inner staff, someone she had seen serving wine the night before. Betrayal. The man sneered, weapon raised. "Mr. Blackwell, you've got something my employers want." His gaze flicked to Elena, and his smile widened. "Or rather, someone." Adrian stepped in front of her, voice calm but edged with fury. "You won't leave this house alive." The intruder's finger twitched on the trigger, and in that split second, Elena moved. She yanked Adrian backward, the shot grazing marble where his head had been. Cole appeared from behind, tackling the man with brutal efficiency. The gun clattered across the floor. "Go!" Cole barked. "Get her out of here!" Adrian didn't hesitate. He pulled Elena down the corridor, her legs stumbling to keep up, until they reached the hidden panel in his study. He pressed his palm against a biometric scanner. The wall slid open, revealing a steel-lined room. Inside, the panic room was stark screens, showing security feeds, locked cabinets, and a heavy steel door. Elena collapsed onto a bench, trembling violently. Adrian crouched before her, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Breathe. You're safe in here," her eyes filled with tears. "No, we're not. They'll keep coming. They'll tear down your walls, buy off your guards, whatever it takes until they have me." Adrian's jaw hardened. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The conviction in his voice sent a strange warmth through her, even amid terror. For the first time in years, someone wasn't abandoning her, but safety was short-lived. On the monitors, they watched as masked men in black stormed the courtyard, silenced weapons glinting under floodlights. Cole and the loyal guards fought back, but they were outnumbered. Elena gripped Adrian's sleeve, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. If they take me, they'll kill you too." "That's what they do. That's what they always do." Adrian met her gaze steadily. "Then tell me why. Tell me what's worth all this bloodshed." Her lips trembled. She had hidden the truth for so long, but watching men die on those screens, hearing the echo of gunfire in the distance, she could no longer carry the burden alone. "My parents weren't just scientists," she whispered. "They were building something. A clean energy engine small enough to power a car, strong enough to power a city. Unlimited energy. No oil, no coal, no greed." Adrian's breath caught. His mind raced. Such a device would shatter industries, dismantle empires. No wonder ruthless men would kill for it. "They died protecting it," Elena continued, tears streaking her cheeks. "And before the Firena, before everything, now my father gave me the blueprints. I've hidden them all this time, and they know." Adrian stared at her, stunned into silence. The impossible repair of his Bentley, the knowledge she carried, it all made sense now. "You hold the key," he murmured. She shook her head violently. "I never wanted it. I just wanted to survive." "But survival," Adrian said, voice steady, "isn't enough anymore. Not for you, not for your child, not for the world." A sudden explosion rocked the mansion. On the monitors, flames leapt from the east wing. Elena screamed, clutching her belly. The steel door shuddered under a heavy blow. Once, twice. They were coming. Adrian stood, his face carved with resolve. He grabbed a pistol from the cabinet, checked the magazine, then looked at her. "No matter what happens," he said firmly, "I will not let them take you." Elena's chest tightened. For years she had carried her burden alone. Now, staring into his unyielding eyes, she believed for the first time that she wasn't alone anymore. The steel door groaned again, dents forming under relentless force. Shadows danced across the screens as armed men poured deeper into the mansion. The trap had fully sprung, and there was no turning back. The steel door rattled under another pounding blow, each strike echoing through the panic room like a war drum. Elena pressed back against the wall, arms wrapped around her belly, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. Adrian stood between her and the door, pistol raised, jaw locked with determination. Every part of him screamed predator, not prey. "Stay behind me," he commanded. The next blow dented the steel deeper. Sparks sprayed as intruders began cutting through with a thermal torch. The hiss of searing metal filled the air. Adrian glanced at Elena. Fear trembled in her eyes, but beneath it burned the same resilience that had stunned him from the beginning, the girl who had walked out of nowhere and repaired what no mechanic could. He leaned close, his voice a whisper edged with fire. "When that door falls, we fight. Together." With a screech of tortured steel, the door gave way. Armed men stormed inside, black masks hiding their faces. "Step aside, Blackwell," one barked. "We only want the girl." Adrian's answer was a bullet. The man crumpled before he finished his sentence. Chaos exploded, gunfire cracked, smoke filled the small space, and shadows leapt across the walls. Adrian moved with ruthless precision, each shot deliberate, each step a shield for Elena. But the intruders were many, and they pressed forward like a tide. One grabbed Elena by the arm, yanking her toward the exit. She screamed, struggling until Adrian's fist smashed into the man's jaw, sending him sprawling. "Run!" Adrian barked, but there was nowhere to run. A figure stepped through the smoke, and Elena's blood froze, her uncle gray at the temples, his once handsome face hardened by cruelty. He looked at her with a smile that made her stomach turn. "Little Elena," he drawled. "You've grown." His gaze dropped to her belly. "And multiplied, I see." Adrian's gun aimed at him instantly. "You'll regret stepping foot in my home." The older man ignored him, eyes fixed on Elena. "You've cost me years, child. Years of chasing, hiding, cleaning up your trail. But it ends tonight. Hand me the blueprints, and maybe I'll let your billionaire live." Elena shook her head, trembling. "You killed them." "You killed my parents," he shrugged. "They were stubborn. I offered them fortune. They chose fire." His voice sharpened. "Don't make the same mistake." Adrian stepped closer, gun unwavering. "You'll get nothing from her." "Not tonight." "Not ever," her uncle's smirk faltered. "You think you can stop me, Blackwell? I own half the men in your world already. Money built your empire, money will tear it down." Adrian's eyes blazed. "You mistake me for a man who fights for money." "Tonight I fight for her." The room stilled. Even Elena gasped, her heart twisting at his words. For the first time, someone had chosen her, not as a burden, not as prey, but as worth fighting for. Her uncle's face darkened. He lifted his hand, signaling his men. "Kill him. Take her." But Elena moved first. With a sudden burst of courage, she grabbed the fallen pistol from the floor and fired. The shot rang true, striking one of the masked men who had aimed at Adrian. The room erupted again, but the balance shifted. Adrian fought like a storm unleashed, his precision deadly. Elena, trembling but resolute, fired again, protecting the life inside her as much as herself. One by one, the attackers fell until only her uncle remained. He snarled, seizing Elena by the arm, pressing a knife to her throat. "Drop it, Blackwell," he hissed. "Or she dies." Adrian's jaw clenched, his finger tight on the trigger. His eyes locked with Elena's, and in that split second, she shook her head. "Don't!" Adrian moved. A single shot split the air. Her uncle staggered, shock etched across his face before he collapsed. Lifeless, Elena fell into Adrian's arms, sobbing. The knife clattering harmlessly to the floor, silence fell, broken only by the crackle of distant flames. Cole rushed in with surviving guards, guns ready, but froze at the scene, the fallen intruders, the broken door. Adrian holding Elena like something irreplaceable. "It's over," Cole said quietly, but Adrian knew it wasn't. Not entirely. Days later, the mansion was restored, though scars of battle lingered. The intruders' bodies were gone, but their presence haunted the halls. Elena sat in the garden, sunlight warming her face. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lifting from her shoulders. The chase was over. Adrian joined her, silent at first. Then softly, he said, "You changed everything, you know. Not just my car, my life." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were not born of fear. They were release, relief, gratitude. "I thought I was nobody," she whispered. "But you saw me." Adrian took her hand gently, his voice low and certain. "You were never nobody. You were just waiting for someone to fight beside you." And for the first time since the fire, Elena allowed herself to believe in tomorrow.